Hello, hello. Hey everyone, and welcome to your weekly live Q&A. I'm Kendra Perry. I am your personal functional diagnostic nutritionist, and if you want to learn more about me, you can always head to my website, kendraperry.net. So today, you guys sent me a lot of questions, a little more detailed ones as well, so this might be a little bit longer. I'm going to be totally honest and upfront with you. My energy, if you're sensing it, if you're one of those empathic type people, it's a little bit low. Right now I'm blaming the smoke. We have a lot of wildfires burning in British Columbia right now, pretty much all around us. Luckily, none that are actually close to us, but it has been smoky for the past week. We've barely seen the sun, and we can barely even see across the lake right now. So haven't really been doing any exercise outside. You can't really do any activity. It kind of sucks. So I think I'm just kind of over it. The mood's a little bit down, but luckily we are getting some rain in the forecast and some cooler temperatures as well. So today's 30, but tomorrow's will be going down to low 20s. So I'm really, really hoping the smoke disappears because I feel like I'm clogged up in my lungs, and I don't know, I'm just kind of like flat. Like I'm kind of just like, I've been super positive up until today, but today is just kind of getting to me, and I'm just kind of over it. And I want to see the sun. I want to see the blue sky. I want to go biking. I want to get outside. So yeah, so I'm a little bit low energy, a little bit kind of like meh today, but I'm going to still answer your questions as enthusiastically, if that's a word, as possible, because you guys sent me some really good ones today. So, okay. So let's jump right into it. And for anyone who's on with me live, definitely dump them in the comments box. I am super happy, or more than happy, to answer them. So this one's a bit of a long one. So this question is, I sent in my GI map test last week, and I'm planning to take the SIBO test tomorrow, Monday, and mailing it the same day. After seeing your article on the 5 treatment mistakes everyone makes with SIBO, I was wondering if I should wait until I see the results of the GI map before taking the SIBO test. I am guessing, you would say it's fine as long as the provider does not start me on SIBO treatment right away. Any suggestions, ideas would be appreciated. Okay, so good question. And yeah, if you saw that video that I made, SIBO is not always the first place to start with. And that's just because if there's bigger infections like parasites, you need to address them first, because honestly, what's really interesting about SIBO. So for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about with SIBO, it's basically just a condition where normal bacteria that is typically and very normally in the large intestine travels up into the small intestine and overgrows, causes malabsorption, dysbiosis. It tends to cause a lot of gas and bloating and belching, maybe even some constipation, diarrhea. It's not fun. You tend to react to get really bloated to a lot of vegetables that you eat, but oftentimes SIBO is actually caused by parasites. And that's because when you get a parasite, it can sometimes have the effect of paralyzing some of the nerves in the gastrointestinal tract, and can actually paralyze the migrating motor complex, which is actually this rippling-like effect that happens in a healthy person about 40 times a day. And it basically just prevents anything that's moved up the GI tract from moving up, and kind of pushes it down. So it's like this rippling effect that keeps on pushing bacteria that's constantly trying to kind of move up the digestive tract. So that's not the only cause of SIBO, but sometimes it is the cause of SIBO. And if a parasite has caused that and you still have that parasite, you actually want to address that first before dealing with the SIBO, because you could address the SIBO and you might be successful, but it may come back. So I always address all infections in the order of parasites, bacteria, and yeast. And so I always start with a GI map stool test. That's always my first line of business. And I can usually see the way certain things or markers present themselves on a GI map. I can usually actually get a pretty good indication of, should we actually be testing for SIBO? But if you've already got the kits and you're deciding to go ahead with it, that's not a big deal. There's nothing wrong with having lots of information. If you're willing to pay for it, that's cool. But yeah, if there are parasites present, you definitely want to be prioritizing those parasite infections and making sure you get rid of those first. When I work with someone who I know has SIBO, because maybe they did a test prior to working with me and then we find parasites, but the SIBO is really bad and it's causing a lot of issues, like sometimes I just address them together. It just means that we may have to kind of continue the SIBO protocol alongside the parasite protocol until those parasites are gone. And then you need to address the reasons why you had SIBO to begin with. So if there was some nerve damage due to a parasite, then you need to take different herbs, things like lion's mane, ginger, certain herbal formulas that actually help re-stimulate those nerve endings and re-stimulate that migrating motor complex. So I hope that helps. Okay, so really good question. Next question. If you could suggest any ideas about eliminating sugar, that would be great. Okay, so yes, I think it's great to eliminate sugar, but I don't think it's as important to eliminate sugar the way that a lot of people think that we should be eliminating sugar. Okay, so I don't really see a big issue with natural sugars, like a little bit of honey, a little bit of maple syrup. I don't see an issue with fruit. I'm not someone who demonizes fruit. Do I think you should be eating 4 bananas a day? Probably not. But if you eat 1 banana a day and some berries and an apple, it's probably not the worst thing. I don't really tend to demonize those natural sugars. Obviously, I think it's important to eat a balanced diet. So you don't want to just be eating sugar. You obviously want to eat other things as well. But I think, if you're talking about refined and processed sugar, candy, those really high sources of human-made white sugar, then yes, I think that's really great to get off of it. And a great way to do that is just to replace it with natural sugar. So, instead of eating a chocolate bar with regular sugar, eat a chocolate bar with honey or something like that. Or, instead of sweetening with sugar, maybe sweeten with honey. I don't actually think we should be demonizing sugar as much as we have been. I know a lot of people want to get rid of sugar because of things like yeast overgrowth and candida, but we should keep in mind that those types of organisms are extremely opportunistic. They're very virulent, and if you don't give them sugar, they're going to just eat whatever it is, the thing you're giving it. So they can adapt and consume other things. So it's not all about the sugar. But yeah, if you're eating really high amounts of sugar, I think it's really important to eat less than around, 30 grams, like 25 grams of sugar a day. I think that's a really good kind of starting point. And I think the best way to get off sugar is to just start replacing it with more natural forms of sugar. Or I think maybe even going cold turkey. So I know when I used to be a bit of a sugar addict, I went cold turkey for a month. And it was really hard for the first couple of weeks. But after I kind of pushed over that hump, I actually stopped thinking about it anymore. I stopped caring. And then after that, I would find things that I wouldn't even remotely find sweet in the past suddenly were very sweet. So an apple suddenly became very sweet. So sometimes it's a matter of just getting it out of your system. But if you don't eat a lot of sugar, but you're trying to get rid of that white refined sugar, I would just replace it with more natural sugars, and I would just get off the processed and refined foods. That's one of the best ways to remove sugar from the diet. So great question. I hope that was helpful. If you guys are on with me live and you have any questions, you can definitely dump them in the comments box. And if not, I'm just going to continue through this questions list. So next question, can Kendra address elevated blood pressure in guys in their 20s with no other illnesses and not overweight? As well, if getting my minerals balanced will address mildly elevated blood pressure, or is this made better by mostly weight loss? Okay, so there's a whole whack of reasons why your blood pressure might be elevated. Definitely, it can relate to a mineral deficiency. I know deficiencies of copper, zinc, vitamin C, vitamin E, and even other nutrients can contribute to this problem. I know when there's a zinc deficiency, it can actually make the arteries quite hard and brittle and inflamed instead of very soft and flexible. And this loss of flexibility can actually raise blood pressure, in particular, I think the systolic pressure. So what causes a zinc deficiency? A lot of different things. A big thing is a copper issue. Copper really does drive zinc out of the body. So a lot of the people that I work with who have copper issues, they do tend to have elevated blood pressure or just an elevated stress response. So stress can also do this as well. Our emotions, getting really stressed out or anxious, can raise our blood pressure. So can inflammation. So can excessive activity of the adrenals and thyroid glands. So the increased thyroid or adrenal hormones can actually lead to more of that hardness of the artery, which can raise blood pressure. On top of that, heavy metal toxicity, and I've actually found this to be really, really common in people who are not overweight. So they have high blood pressure without the weight, and they have excessive levels of cadmium, lead, arsenic, or even aluminum. So I see that quite a bit. I live in an area where we do have a zinc and lead smelter. It's pretty far away. It's about an hour away, but a lot of my friends actually work at this place, and I work with a few people who work at this smelter, and I've seen really elevated blood pressure, and we've had to do a lot of heavy metal detoxing, and that seems to really help. So it really depends on why, but I would say, like, if you have elevated blood pressure, it's a sign that something is wrong and something that you should address, because it is just going to get worse in the future and possibly lead to something worse. Mineral balance is actually a really, really great way to address this. Getting those minerals back into balance can be a really, really great way to resolve that. So yeah, reach out to me if you're interested in doing that with me, because I can definitely help you with that. So really, really great question. Okay. Okay, sorry. Again, my energy is super whacked out today, but I'm going to keep pushing through this. I'm excited to answer your questions. Okay. So next question, how detrimental is it if someone can only get in 2 meals per day, not making the 1,600 calories per day that doctor wants to see, but is eating as healthy as possible, i.e. no grains, no sugar, no junk food? So I only eat two meals a day. So if you saw my last Facebook Live, I talked a lot about intermittent fasting. So I've been really into intermittent fasting. I've been skipping breakfast. I've been loving it. And I typically am only eating 2 meals a day. And sometimes I will only eat 1 meal a day in the case where I do a 24-hour fast. I do that usually 1 or 2 days a week. And then the rest of the week, I'm usually doing a 16-hour fast. And on the weekends, I may not fast at all, especially if I'm going hiking or doing any big bike rides or any extremely physical activity. In that case, I won't fast. But I don't think there's an issue with eating 2 meals a day. I think that's fine. I think everyone's different. If you feel like you're not getting, 1,600 calories is pretty low. It definitely depends on your activity level. Like if you live a very stagnant life and you're not moving a lot throughout the day, that might not be that big of a deal, but it can be detrimental if you are trying to lose weight. Because if you do go too low calorie, you really can reduce your metabolism by, giving that information to your body that there is a shortage of food. You don't have a lot of resources, so it can really downregulate the metabolism. So it kind of depends on what your needs are. But a really great way to actually increase your calories is just to increase fat content. If you're only eating 1,600 calories a day, you could literally eat 2 more tablespoons of olive oil or butter or coconut oil and get another 300 calories in there. So fat's a really, really great way to do this. This is why I love a higher fat diet, because you don't need to consume as much to get those calories in, which is really nice. So I would say, like, if you're only eating 2 meals a day, you just need to make it count. It sounds like you are. So in those 2 meals a day, making sure you're eating lots of vegetables, a big variety of vegetables, lots of healthy meats, like all those really healthy foods, because you're less opportunity to get that nutrition into your body. So you need to make it count. And that's typically what I do when I'm fasting. When I'm doing intermittent fasting, is I make sure to eat 2 really big salads or big stir fries for those meals. I make sure to get a really wide variety of minerals and nutrients in there. And then I also supplement with my minerals on top of that, because I just want to make sure I'm getting everything I need. So I don't see an issue with that at all. I really don't believe that humans evolved eating 3 meals a day. I have a hard time believing that. Back in the day when we didn't have refrigeration, or this consistent access to readily available food, like I don't think humans were eating 3 meals a day. I think it was very inconsistent, right? Especially when we were hunter-gatherers. So I don't see an issue with that at all. I would just make sure you're getting enough calories, you're eating enough for your activity levels, because your body does need a certain base level of calories to function, to get through just your regular bodily functions that don't include exercise. 1,600 seems low. I don't know how much you weigh. I don't know how tall you are, but I would definitely try to get it a little bit closer to 2,000, and that might be really easy to do just with a little bit of extra fat on your meal. So really good question. I hope that helped. Next question, and guys, if you're on with me live and you want to ask me a question in the comments box, you can definitely go for it. Otherwise, I'm just going to continue on because we have 3 more questions. So, will Biosil help with bone density if it's being used in conjunction with Pectisol for heavy metal detox? So, Biosil is basically silicone. It's these silicone drops. It's marketed for bone, skin, hair, teeth health. Building bone requires a lot of minerals and a lot of nutrients. So if you're experiencing bone loss, you need to work with someone to do a mineral balancing program, and that requires testing at regular intervals and constantly keeping up with your needs. So it's not enough to just do one hair mineral analysis and go with that. You need to be retesting every around 5 months and seeing where things are at, because things are constantly shifting. And with minerals, we have a lot of calcium in the bone. We have a lot of boron, we have magnesium, we have a lot of different minerals and nutrients in the bone. And then we also need to have the other supporting minerals and nutrients to keep those minerals in the bone. So the most common cause of bone loss would be a magnesium deficiency, copper toxicity, iodine deficiency, anything that pulls calcium from the bone and makes it really hard for people or for people's bodies to keep calcium in the bone. So I think Biosil can be helpful, but it's not going to be enough. Like, there's not just one single thing you can take to help with bone density. If bone density is an issue, you absolutely need to do mineral balancing, and you need to stay on top of it. You need to work with a practitioner who knows what the hell they're doing, and you need to be retesting regularly and constantly keeping up with your needs. And it's not an instant thing. It would take time. I would also be looking at your hormones, because definitely lower estrogen levels can lead to more bone loss. So Biosil can definitely be helpful. I don't use it as a bone builder. I typically use it as, heavy metal detox, like you said, because it immobilizes metals and the Pectosol C will bind to them. So that's actually a really good heavy metal detox strategy. Anyone can use that. Anyone can benefit from that. I would never take Biosil without Pectosol C because it does stir up metals. But yeah, I would say on its own, it's probably going to contribute and help a little bit, but it's not going to be the be all end all. It's not going to give you the bone density that you're potentially looking for. That needs to be hair mineral analysis balancing. Okay. So great question. Next question, can prolonged stress, such as 1.5 years, cause gut and hormonal issues? Absolutely. So prolonged stress can cause so many things. It's crazy. So typically when I start working with a client, when we have our free call, I'll ask them like, hey, like, was there any stressful event or any major event in your life that coincided with you experiencing these health problems? Most people will say yes. So they experienced a death of a loved one. Maybe they got in an accident. Maybe they were the primary caregiver for one of their parents. Maybe they lost a child, or they went through a divorce. Like, there can be all these things. And I find that it's not 100% of the time, but I find this really commonly, that there is some really major event that seems to kind of bring on or really push the body out of balance. So I think it's not the cause necessarily, but it can be a trigger, meaning that there's a lot of dysfunction that might be going on in our body for a very long time. And then we go through an extremely stressful event and it triggers it. So for me, it was my ACL reconstruction surgery. So I definitely had issues going on in my body. You know, as a teenager, I had, horrible periods. I had lots of digestive issue. I remember just, always having diarrhea and stuff like that. And things kind of got worse and worse and worse. And what really kind of pushed me over into a horrible place with my health was actually getting ACL reconstruction. So I'm a crazy skier, and I used to be an even crazier skier. And there was a time about 10 years, or I guess it was about 7 years ago, where I wanted to be a professional skier. So I was shooting with lots of photographers. I was trying to go big. I was trying to jump off big shit to try to get the shot. And I was pushing it pretty hard, and I had a big fall off a pillow. I blew out my knee, and I had to get my whole ACL reconstructed. And before that, I ended up going in for a scope for my meniscus. And that surgery definitely triggered my health issues, because immediately right after that surgery, I felt terrible. I felt drained. I felt exhausted. And then 2 months after that surgery is when I went through my first major bout of insomnia that almost destroyed me. So that was a major trigger for me. Obviously, there was shit going on with my health, but typically there tends to be a trigger. And stress is a big part of this. And how does this happen? Well, so our emotions and stress have a direct effect on our mineral levels. So when we get stressed or upset or emotional, our sodium tends to go up, our potassium tends to go down, and that intensifies the stress response. So that can drive inflammation. That can actually greatly increase the burn rate of magnesium and lead to magnesium loss. And that can actually lead to calcium being pulled from the bone and getting pushed into the soft tissue, so bone loss. And minerals play a major role in our immune system, but also in our production and detoxification of hormones. So it's not necessarily direct, but it's definitely indirect. Stress will definitely raise your cortisol, which can mess with your body's ability to produce things like estrogen, testosterone, progesterone. And I think we've all experienced the stress-gut connection, right? Because I think, if you're standing in front of an audience about to give a speech, butterflies in the stomach, right? We often feel that right in our gut. I know that when I was young and I had to give a speech, I would literally get diarrhea because that's how much of an effect it had on my gut. So I think we've all experienced that brain stress gut connection. So absolutely, especially if you have been under chronic stress for a year and a half plus, that's going to cause issues. Absolutely, that can cause issues in any system in the body. So the answer is yes. Okay. So I have one last question, and if you're on with me live, make sure to get your questions in the comments box. I'm happy to answer them. List some challenges of eating a vegetarian diet, protein intake, etc. So I don't see too many issues with eating a vegetarian diet because my understanding of a vegetarian diet is that they still would consume animal products in the form of eggs, in the form of maybe fish, that sort of thing. So I guess it depends what you mean by vegetarian. If you're a vegetarian who's a vegan and doesn't eat any animal products, I think that can be problematic. I always get lots of angry pushback from this, but it is a very depleting diet and it doesn't give you everything you need. So if you are someone who's very committed to a vegan lifestyle, you need to supplement because there's certain things that you just can't get from plant products. Okay, so B12 is one of them. B12 is one of the most important B vitamins for energy, and it's actually really high in meat products. The only nutritional source I think I know of is nutritional yeast. So you could eat nutritional yeast, but you have to be really on top of it. And usually with my vegan clients, I try to convince them to eat cricket protein. I know that sounds weird, but it's actually a very sustainable and high protein source. And yes, it's an animal, but I figure like if you're eating vegetables from agriculture, you're already eating bugs because they're getting mixed up into when you're harvesting the vegetables, when you're harvesting grains, those bugs are already going to be in there. So to me, it feels like, well, you're already doing that anyways. So it is really hard to get good protein from vegetarian sources, and the big thing for this is because most of the typically or so-called high vegan protein foods aren't actually high sources of protein. So legumes and beans, for example, are about 90% carbohydrate. There's only about 10% protein. And with nuts and seeds, they're about 90% fat. So they're technically not good sources of protein. Yes, a lot of these foods do have protein in it, but it's really hard to extract, and I would say it really depends on your digestion. So I get really worried about my clients who have significant gut issues and they're vegans and they're committed to it because they have bad digestion. So if you are going to be successful as a vegan, I think you need to have really, really good digestion. It's very hard to pull. Just because there's protein in a plant source doesn't mean your body is able to digest it and extract it, okay? And the way our stomachs are kind of designed, like we don't have the really long stomach that gorillas or cows have that actually help them pull a lot of those minerals and nutrients and protein from plant sources. So I really do believe that humans are meant to be omnivores. I think people overeat meat, absolutely. I think people are pounding it pretty hard. I like to kind of do meat more as a condiment, so a couple small pieces of protein a day is usually enough. I totally believe in plant-based foods, more of a plant-based diet, but I do think animal products are important. So I would say if you're a vegetarian and you're still eating eggs, that's a really good a relatively good protein source. I mean, it is mostly a fat source, but it still has good protein. And if you're willing to eat fish, that's a good source of protein as well. And if you are a vegan, I would say you definitely need to be doing a protein powder. You can do hemp, you can do like a rice or pea protein, but honestly, cricket protein is the best bet. And I know that sounds weird, but it's actually a really sustainable source of protein. And I think we're going to be seeing more and more of it in the future, especially in countries that don't have way too much population or don't have the land base to do sustainable agriculture. So I think that's a big issue. I think if you're not eating red meat, you are missing out on a lot of iron and B12 because that does tend to come from more of the red meat. I think you're likely missing out on tryptophan. And so really when it comes to like whether you're going to be more of an omnivore and eat some meat versus like a vegan vegetarian, I think you got to go with what's right for you. Yes, I've definitely seen people who thrive on that type of diet, but I've also seen a lot of people not thrive at all. So I think it really comes down to determining like what's going to work best for you. And if your health is in the toilet and you feel awful, it might actually be time to try something different and try to shift your diet. So I am someone who was a vegetarian for a very long time. I did the vegan thing for a while too. It didn't work for me. I had a lot of anxiety. I had a lot of mental health issues. I was depressed. I had, like I said, anxiety. I was very panicky. I was very snappy. And when I started eating more of like a paleo style diet and consuming more meat and protein, those issues almost went away overnight. It was actually kind of a miracle for me. So for me, I know that I will never be able to eat a vegan or vegetarian diet. Like that's just not, I will not be able to maintain a good level of health. So I think it all depends, but I think there are a lot of challenges. I think if you are going to be a vegan or vegetarian, you got to be smart. You got to be, looking into B12 supplements. You got to be thinking about nutritional yeast. You got to be thinking about your protein powder, supplementing with tryptophan. I also think you got to be very careful with your beans and grains. You got to be soaking and fermenting your grains, maybe sprouting them. You need to be soaking and fermenting your beans and legumes as well. So I think, and you got to be really focusing on those healthy fats. So I think you can do it. You just got to be really careful with it, because I honestly have met a lot of vegans and vegetarians that just eat soy-based products and they just eat, a refined food diet, but they're vegan or vegetarian. So I think it's possible. I definitely don't recommend it, but I will support people who are really committed to it. Because, I don't want to stress people out, and some people just have their preference. It's a texture thing. Maybe they just can't do it. But yeah, it can be a really challenging diet, and I would say you just need to be really on top of it with your protein intake and those vitamins that are just really, really hard to extract from plant foods. So I hope that was helpful. That's your weekly Q&A. My next Facebook Live show is going to be on Tuesday. It's every Tuesday, usually at 4:45. Sometimes that changes, but it should be next Tuesday at 4:45. I will not be having a Facebook Live show the week after. Again, I have no idea what the topic is going to be. If you have suggestions, if there's something you want to learn about or you want me to discuss, let me know. I'm always open to discussing what you guys want to learn about. So, just let me know. If you have any questions, just answer them in the or just put them in the comments box. I do come back and check these. And if you guys are interested in working with me, I do have a few spots open for clients right now. I am anticipating September, October to be crazy. That's usually when things get really busy and I end up with a wait list. So if you want to get in early, now is the time. You can just send a message to my Facebook page or just go to my website, kendraperry.net, and book in your free consult. We can have a chat. Okay, guys, I hope you have a really good weekend. I hope you are, if you have smoke where you are, if you're in BC or the Western North America, let's pray for rain. Let's pray for cooler temperatures, and hopefully we get some clear skies soon, and hopefully we get some sun on our face. Okay, have a good